Hello and welcome to the Popcorn Junkies.
Hi, Popcorn Junkies, it's us.
Popcorn Junkie 1.
Popcorn Junkie 2.
Yay! Which are you, Mum?
2.
Oh, there you go. We are reviewing a film called Love Lies Bleeding. And this is a new film from those producers that we love, A24.
Yeah.
Aren't they good? It stars, who does it star, Mum? Kristen Stewart. It stars Kristen Stewart. There was a sort of, she's gobsmacked.
Yeah.
Starring Kristen Stewart, newcomer Katy O'Brian. We've also got Anna Baryshnikov in there, who is
Baryshnikov's daughter.
Mikhail Baryshnikov's daughter. Dave Franco, who
who would have thunk it?
James Franco's brother, who incidentally I thought in the Disaster Artist was sensational.
Yeah.
I think it's a fact. Like you said, I prefer him to James.
Yeah, I do.
And who can ignore the fact that there's also Ed Harris in this film too, the Skeletor.
Looking unspeakably sinister.
Skeletor with remarkable hair and remarkable lines in his face.
I know, but they're sort of like very sculptural lines.
Do you think he's invested in those lines?
Well, put it this way, I thought that as I was watching it. Then I thought, you wouldn't really want a facelift at this stage of his career, would you?
He wouldn't want to polyfiller in those crevices,
I mean,
would he?
those crevices make him.
Yeah, they make the man. Okay, so this is the second film from British director Rose Glass. She made Saint Maud. English director, which was the horror film sort of. Was it demonic possession, nunnery?
Do you know what,
Catholicism,
Mark?
set
We
in
all went to
Margate
see you, me, and Mark and Maddie, didn't we? Just before Christmas or just after.
Yeah.
And I know that that's the film that she did, and I know it was her first film, but I could not remember a single thing about it. But I think it was demonic possession.
It was like a bed sit in Margate or Hastings, and she was kind of. Do you remember her arching her back and she was putting her feet into shoes with nails in?
Yes.
Self-harm and flagellation.
It's very exorcist-ish in that respect.
Very Catholic for you, Mum.
Well, that's what I mean.
I mean, you were active Catholic, weren't you?
Yeah.
Were you? I don't know.
Of course I was.
Is that why you think all that demonic stuff kind of speaks to you?
Well, there's got to be a reason why it frightens me so much.
Do you think you're evil?
Oh, don't stop.
The reason it's important to know that she made essentially a horror film, though it's more than that, it kind of reduces it a bit.
Yeah, that's true.
The trailer for this, which we've reacted to, has what I would call a horrific quotient or aspect to it. You know, there's blood, there's gore, there's physicality, there's violence, and there's kind of
drug misuse. And
what comes with all of those things is the ability to really kind of go into kind of hallucinogenic horror. So the trailers clearly indicated this was going to be a sort of stylish, dark, twisted, dramatic tale or story. A nice term that Tarantino kind of has nudged into the mainstream a bit was grindhouse.
Grindhouse.
How would you describe, for those who don't know what grindhouse is, Mum, because this sort of sits within that grindhouse genre. How would you describe a grindhouse?
Well, it comes from a certain part of America, which I can't remember now, maybe the South, and it indicates a sort of a horror film, but ladled on horror film, more horror than horror, violence, people coming out of graves, lots
more
of
exploitation in a sense.
Exploitation, exactly. I mean, a lot of there was a thing called. Do you remember when they banned a lot of videos when you were young, and a lot of those video nasties, a lot of those were grindhouse, and the director that most speaks to it now is Tarantino, and he actually made a film called Grindhouse.
But it was an anthology film, wasn't it?
It was, yeah. I think they were quite short. They were for Saturday. No, they couldn't have been for Saturday morning.
I think they were. What they were those sort of films. They were kind of chuckaway films almost. You get
yes.
Do you know what I mean? So you get B movies.
Yeah.
But these were kind of B movies that were either extremely violent. I'm thinking of films like Miss 45, Angel of Vengeance by Abel Ferrara.
Yeah. I Spit on Your Grave. Did you?
Yeah, all that kind of stuff. You know, I think very much the Scala cinema in London. There was a certain era where you could almost argue it was a grindhouse cinema. That's the kind of stuff they showed. Toxic Avenger, that kind of stuff.
Yeah. One of its characteristics is this sort of huge splashy. Excuse me.
Don't you just splash me, Mum, with your coffee?
Splashy red. Lettering, isn't it? Writ large all over the screen for starting.
Almost bleeding with distortion and almost unrendered in its kind of sort of archivalness. This is clearly set in the late 80s. This is very much a kind of period piece. You've got all that kind of. It's the Jim Bunny. It's the kind of VHS cassettes. It's the
hair, the perms.
Yeah,
everything.
The perms. The pumping iron. You remember the Arnie Schwarzenegger documentary film?
They all look like.
You know, bodybuilding, there was a time when, and basically this is set within the world of female bodybuilding. It's not weightlifting, it's not wrestling.
No. Although they use weights to develop the body.
Exactly.
And other things.
In the press, Kristen Stewart, a lot was made of this quote. I wanted to do the gayest thing I've ever done.
Oh, did she say that?
Yeah.
I didn't see that.
And I think the other L that's not in Love Lies Bleeding is lesbian. This is a lesbian, if you like, feminist. Is it feminist? Lesbian revenge thriller.
Yeah, why not? Yeah, with bells on.
No bell ends. So I'll give a brief kind of précis of the plot. So you've got Kristen Stewart. She works in a gym. This woman comes into town, played by Katy O'Brian. She's that classic American thing. She's moving through town.
She is, and Kristen Stewart is sort of like she's a jobs worker. She's doing anything she can. When we meet her, she's emptying toilets. I mean, that's ridiculous. It was, but it's to say to us, this is all she's doing. Really.
Yeah, she manages a gym, and it's pretty shitty and it's pretty horrible.
She's
clearing up shit, and she's dealing with men, and it's smelly. You could smell the gym.
You could,
couldn't you?
And almost.
Could you though?
Oh, certainly could.
I could smell it.
And almost straight away, a character that we are introduced to while she's doing the toilet, she's literally doing the toilet, is Baryshnikov's daughter, whatever her name is.
Anna Baryshnikov.
Who's got the wonderful crystal meth teeth, which are brown.
Yeah.
But he's actually, she starts off like such a pain, but I thought she was quite sweet in the end.
Oh, yeah,
I felt sorry for her.
She was a great character, and I think she speaks to sort of other characters we've had in the past, which you don't get often in these kind of things. So you've got her. She runs a gym. She's in a sort of speaknik town, but it's not even a town. It's kind of like it's just a drive-through road, isn't it? With kind of just warehouses.
Yeah.
Which is what a lot of sort of some American sort of communities
and eating places occasionally. I mean, it's a nowhere place.
Yeah, it sort of lacks a focus. It lacks a heart. Lots of neon signs. You feel crime is going to happen here. Her dad is Ed Harris. He runs a shooting range, and he runs that, and also working from his JJ, played by Dave Franco, who's essentially Kristen Stewart's brother-in-law. He lives with obviously her sister. And they have, and he's a domestic abuser. He's horrible.
Yeah,
he's physically violent and really nasty. And so what becomes apparent is that essentially Kristen Stewart has stayed in town because she's worried about her sister-in-law, her sister, because her brother-in-law's a bastard. But she's also kind of beholden to old Ed Harris, who's this malevolent
She is,
character.
but she hates him, and she sort of has not
just for his hair.
Well, for everything, she really despises him.
It's quite an astonishing achievement to be completely bald and have long hair.
I know, actually. Did you notice there was a V in the back of his sort of bald head as it came down, almost as if he'd like...
What's that?
Yeah, almost as if his hair came to a point and he'd ask the hairdresser to say, go to a V and then my hair will... I thought, my God, Ed. But
I mean, he's really... you've seen him in the trailer. He's frightening.
I mean, the last time I saw Ed Harris on film, I thought, oh my God, he's going to die soon because he was so old. His voice was very weak.
Yeah.
And in this, he's as frightening as he ever has been in all his films.
Yeah, really is. So he's very much a sort of... So the men in this film, the men are horrible. Ed Harris is basically... You just feel... You meet all the signs are there that untowardness is happening. Ed Harris isn't a good cookie. He's not a nice cookie. But also, JJ is a horrible man. Not only is he abusing her sister, but he's also had sex with the woman, Katy O'Brian, Jacqueline or Jackie, who's passing through town. Now, why is Jackie passing through town? Apparently she's a new actress, unknown actress, Katy O'Brian. I thought she was brilliant. I thought she was incredibly enigmatic. Really, the thrust of the film is she's passing through town to go to the Las Vegas female bodybuilding
championship of the year. I mean, the film almost starts with the sexual relationship between her and JJ.
Yeah, so she has sex with Kristen Stewart's brother-in-law.
And the reason I'm saying it like that is it's close up. We don't even really know these characters at all, do we? It's full on, and it's only we're introduced to the characters bit by bit, but. The director gives us enough sort of violent sexual togetherness that we realise that what we're going to get in a way.
Yeah, it's not erotic. It's functional. It's horrible. It earmarks that Dave Franco is an absolute bastard, nasty piece of shit.
But rough.
But also it earmarks the fact that Katy O'Brian is a wandering soul. She's a lost soul.
Yes.
And whilst this is a film about the essentially lesbian romance between Kristen Stewart and Katy O'Brian, these two characters, although this is their love story or their burgeoning love story, that threaded throughout the whole thing is that actually Jackie, the bodybuilder, she's kind of just in it for herself. In a sense, she's a survivor.
She is. Well, she's more than a survivor, but yeah that's all.
So as this was getting going, I really, right from the start, I thought I liked I liked her coverage of scenes. I liked the extreme close-ups. her sense of era, I thought, was brilliantly observed. The grain and that, as I was saying earlier, the bleeding of colour was nice.
Yeah, I thought that was as good as anything I've ever seen.
Were you aware you were going to see a lesbian love story?
I was aware that I was going to see a lesbian love story. What I wasn't prepared for was all the other stuff.
Right, okay. And so...
and the fact that, obviously, it's muscle-bound.
Right. Are you a fan of that sort of stuff?
No, and I think I said to you at one point, either before or during, that I do have problems with women with huge muscles.
Do you?
I mean, I think it's a good idea to obviously have a strong body, male or female. But what happens when they get as big as Schwarzenegger got, and this girl is as big as Schwarzenegger got? There's no grace. There's no grace in their movement or I mean, they can do amazing things with their body, and they become the Hulk. You said at one point she's becoming the Hulk.
She does at times look like Lou Ferrigno.
And all the stuff that the Hulk has got, she's got. And she's sweet, this girl. You wouldn't know.
The weird thing about the whole bodybuilding thing is it's weird, isn't it? All the sinew and all the muscle, for me, kind of almost negates gender. It sort of, it drains gender from the body.
Yeah.
Which is odd. The reason I asked that is obviously you're gay, you've had lesbian relationships, and I wondered to what extent this was a film about that sort of butch femme thing. Was that part of the whole thing? Was that kind of something that lesbians would pick up on, or the LGBTQ would pick up on more than I would say? I
think definitely, although I don't know in itself if that's such a big thing as it was in my day, but yes.
One of the other things I was liking about this too, I was being reminded of films like The Florida Project, where I very much felt we were watching if not a kind of class, but a kind of a community or a culture or people that one rarely gets to see in films. It was kind of mucky, it was dirty, it was... And I thought Kristen Stewart did a really good job, and some people sort of say this is what her appeal is. I mean, she's never particularly floated my boat. I've always found her somewhat reserved and kind of sort of like almost get away from me kind of performance, which kind of, in a weird way in this, worked, because she always seems incredibly...
ordinary.
Yeah, kind of ordinary, but also kind of like she's hiding something.
I don't disagree with you, but she's built her shtick on being so-called ordinary, I think.
Yeah.
And it's very sort of attractive, more attractive in some films than other, because especially in something like this where everything else other than her is so dramatic that you need her sort of like... Oh, you know, she's us in this film. Like,
she's very much the beating heart of the film. I mean, thank God, you know, she's the one around which everything. And in a weird way, she is the most ordinary aspect. Everything happening around her is.
That's what I mean.
Yeah, it's extraordinary. Absolutely right.
Remember, she played Lady Diana, so that was a real.
Oh yes, of course, Lady.
And she was good.
So drugs comes into the equation quite quickly.
Very quickly.
Yeah, and I just want to reiterate, the camera work sensational, director of photography beautiful, the editing crisp and languorous at the right times, the evocation of kind of horror through very simple devices which are very grindhousey, like flash frames of Ed Harris's face lit by a red neon light. You know, theoretically this is all quite cliche, but it works. It worked really well, and that was partly down to a brilliant soundtrack, brilliant editing.
Yeah, the soundtrack was great.
A lot of coverage, certainly at the beginning of the film, which I think I really like, and it's a preference I like when shooting stuff, in what they call ECU, extreme close-up. And that just allowed us to really get into almost the kind of dirtiness of everything that was going on, even if it was kind of like, because then we move into kind of quite erotic scenes, you know, some quite awkward stuff to watch with your mum, you know, so licking stamps
erotic
and things like
to
that.
some people, but horrible
quite physical.
It'd be a huge hit on the gay circuit,
on
the lesbian circuit.
Right. But then, of course, steroids comes into the equation, Mark.
Very quickly. And I read a review that said, and I can't remember where, it said it was, the reviewer was very pleased that steroids were introduced, and we got the full measure of the fact that steroids, I think what he was saying was that steroids are around that business. Bodybuilding, and it was sort of showing it as it was. I mean, what she brings out is an absolute sort of incredible kit that looks like it's come from sort of some fashion thing. I mean, doesn't it?
Yeah.
I mean, it's clear they're going to have sex. I can't remember if they had it at that point, probably. But they're going to, even if they don't. But she sort of brings it out proudly, almost like somebody would offer, I suppose, to be literal, like somebody would offering you a different type of drug.
Well, I was getting crossed wires with my drugs. I was thinking, hang on a minute, she's pumping her with steroids. Do steroids make you want to have sex suddenly? Because I know other drugs that do, and so.
I think it does. Possibly. I think there is a thing of
maybe
that.
It fires you to. I mean, I guess testosterone is in there.
Yeah.
I mean, I found the steroid thing really. I liked that. I liked it, as insofar as I think the character arc, if you like, of our weightlifter or bodybuilder, Jackie. Her whole character arc becomes, in a sense, is the vehicle that takes us off into magic realism.
Yes.
The film does start to sort of spread off into, you know, sort of outlandish visions of kind of extreme, kind of like hallucinatory almost, you know, visions of the stars, which was kind of earmarked at the beginning with the kind of wide shots of the scenery. You had clearly matteyed in or CGI'd star action.
I thought maybe they were actually in the desert.
Yeah, but what I liked about all of that was it kind of gave us the idea that this, you know, it was screaming out visually that this is a sort of, what's the word, a fable for our times.
Yeah, no, you're right.
And that magic, and there is a real sort of magic, but that connecting that magical realism, if you like, to actually the source of it being something quite horrible, which is steroid addiction, which clearly contorts and distends and disturbs Jackie's brain, as well as her body, Mum.
Well, it does, but we're given some indication as the film goes on that she's had sort of various turns before the film starts, don't we? I mean, sort of weird turns.
Well, let's talk about JJ and Dave Franco. So this is a spoiler review, so let's get into this. So we've got Jackie, brain starting to go to pot, anger management issues, she's come from the outside, they're falling in love. It becomes a bit of a kind of Bonnie and Clyde type thing because of what happens here.
Yeah, let me just quickly interject and say that what's nice about it, and especially for a gay woman watching it, it's very clear that a woman, I don't know whether she's gay or not, is directing this film. The scene where Kristen injects
her
Jackie with her bottom with this drug is so tenderly done. She kisses it afterwards, and it's just done like a mother and child thing. She's very clever, Rose Glass, because that would normally be so much made of it in a sort of crass way. Do you agree?
Yeah, it wasn't eroticized for men. It was for them.
I know what you mean.
And then I would say actually a lot of the sex in this is very much, she manages to achieve something quite, because there's always that kind of standard thing, isn't it? Oh, men like lesbian sex anyway because it's women. But I thought this very much felt like sex for lesbians and for women who would get that, rather than the male gaze watching it and being able to enjoy it. But yeah, so let's not beat around the bush. This becomes an extraordinarily violent film. It's got 15 certificate, and yet we have a jaw disconnected in such sensational fashion. Mum, that moment, so this is the moment where essentially Jackie loses her shit with JJ, Dave Franco, because he's an abusive bastard.
Who is the man that she's first had sex with? But I don't even know if we know that.
Yeah, no, we do know that. That's the guy that we've seen in close up earlier. But she's destroyed him because she's obviously, you know, she's got this loyalty to Kristen Stewart and her family, and her sister is now, and her sister, Kristen Stewart's sister, is in a hospital bed with the most awful domestic abuse,
which is sort of like an almost sort of real life wound, which is awful. But what happens to JJ Subs, I cannot tell you. It's the most violent thing I've ever seen in anything.
I've never seen a flapping jaw nor heard one.
No, nor me. And when they show you his face, it's sort of extra. It is what would happen to her face.
Well, she's jawed him. I think it's called curbing. No, it
happens, is it?
It's a known thing, and apparently the kids say it's just the most. Unfortunately, our children know someone who this has happened to. Where what they actively do is they get you onto the curb, and that's not what she does in it. She just happens to smash his head down onto a table.
Yeah.
His jaw. A flapping jaw.
3 times she does it, and she literally. Well, you can't recognise. I know it does me.
It's unrecognisable.
Mark and I were like this.
Yeah, it's a very unvain performance by Dave Franco.
It is.
But can I say what I thought some of the magic moments...
And that's just the start.
Yeah, that is just the start. Well, some of the more, not magical moments, this is not magical at all, but that was horrific. But I think slightly more horrific, potentially, was I thought a really brilliantly executed moment or scene or shot was Ed Harris, who comes into the hospital and he's looking at essentially his daughter who's been beaten up in the bed, and he touches her wounds. I thought that was it was the most malevolent, creepy. It wasn't tender. It was like he was just literally kind of mapping them out. Yeah. And feeling them. And you almost felt, I don't know if you felt this, like he wanted to hurt her more.
Oh, no, I didn't feel
like he wanted to press her. Oh, no, I felt...
I felt his repressed anger, but I didn't feel that he wanted to make it worse.
I think he was angry with JJ.
No, angry with her. No, I get that.
No, but I thought that for me was a moment almost Frank Booth. I mean, I'm getting with Ed Harris, I was getting Frank Booth vibes from Blue Velvet.
And also, he's a good actor, that guy. Oh. There's a moment where that happens as you described, and then he goes out of the room, and as he goes out, because Jackie, the woman, is working for him at his firearm ranch. I don't know if we said that.
Oh, yes, the bodybuilder.
The bodybuilder, and obviously Kristen is his daughter. And as he goes out, his gaze, did you notice his gaze goes from one to the other of the two women and recognises what they are. So in that moment, he recognises, and he shows it all in his eyes.
Ed Harris is sensational for all of the judgments he's making but doesn't make them overt. It's that great line I think Martin Landau years ago said: if you need to act a scene of crying where you're upset, don't cry.
Yeah.
If you're playing a scene where you're drunk, don't be drunk.
Yeah.
You have to go against what you're, and he does that all the way through this. Ed Harris, he goes.
But that was a momentary thing, and I thought, my God, you've got in your eyes, you're saying, oh, that's connected, and thinking of it in terms of him, how that would benefit him.
What I also liked about this was, there's the classic story arc or the story type, isn't there, called Man in a Hole, which Breaking Bad is a classic example.
Yeah.
And it's a staple narrative device, man in a hole. But this is a woman in a hole, and because a lot of men are in a hole. Because really this then becomes this becomes a film about how they essentially cover up the fact that steroid mad Jackie, who's dished total kind of hell to Dave Franco's jaw. How do they cover this up? How do they get away with it? How do they escape?
What do they do with the body?
What do they do? And what becomes clear is that Ed Harris is obviously the local sort of villain who's even got the police, in his pay. And so how does our Kristen get out of this? Yeah, well, one thing is to remember is she hates her father, but she's deeply, by this point, in love with Jackie. And what she didn't ask her to do that to JJ, and she didn't know. I mean, although she was furious with him, she's shocked to the core. But from that point on, for the rest of the film, I thought this was quite interesting as well. She's clearing up after Jackie, isn't she? And she's sort of doing, in a way, it goes back to the very first scene. That's what she does. She clears up. She's shocked for a second, but then she goes. Well, she's doing for Jackie what we discovered she's been doing for her dad for years. Yeah. Which is essentially killing people for him or mopping up the mess after things, a bit like Harvey Keitel from Pulp Fiction. Yeah. And where they tip all these bodies, which is where they tip Dave Franco, is down this ravine, down which there's all of Ed Harris's other victims are down the bottom. Is she actually involved in the physical business of killing them? No, I couldn't work that out. Well, no, there was a sequence where he says to her, he gives her the gun and she shoots someone. I mean, talk about codependency. What was keeping her in orbit with her? Because there was that really clever moment where Jackie the bodybuilder says, "You don't need to stay here now, Kristen, because because we've dealt with him." But so it was the alert. It was the connection between her and Daddy. Yeah. What did she say when she said that? Daddy. I can't remember what she just looked. Yeah. It was really hard for me to shake the parallels with the Hulk. Yes. Because when she got angry. Do you remember the Lutherino on telly? He would say, "You're not going to. Yeah. You won't like me when I get angry. Yes. Yeah. You don't like Kate. You don't like Jackie when she gets angry. No, you don't. When Jackie gets angry. And what did you make of all of the kind of the sinewy, muscly sound design of muscles? That was really well done. And then the tearing of. Because it was clearly metaphorical. Yeah. Or was it? I thought it was well done. I thought it spoke to me. It looked real. I mean, you say to me at one point when it very first pops the muscle, "Oh my God, she's turning into the Hulk." And at that point, we didn't know she was literally going to turn into the Hulk. And she did at times remind me of She-Hulk. When She-Hulk's kind of bulked up and kind of wandering around. Yeah, I've never seen that, but I mean, it made me realise that although I don't like muscles and it doesn't sort of attract me, I quite like to watch men in terms of their bodybuilding lining up. Weird. Okay. Well, no, just to see who's the best, who's the biggest muscles. Right. Because they are clearly damaging themselves in an effort to get the biggest muscles. Yeah. It seems madness to me. Well, we don't want to do a kind of step-by-step walk through the entire plot. Suffice it to say, it's very, very bloody. There's another shockingly scary death of a key character when I totally least expected it. Before you knew it, blood everywhere, so there were some really jump-out moments. There's some real. She's very good at jump scares, actually, considering it's only a second film. She does blood really well. Yes. You've got like rolled up bodies and carpets. You've got cats licking the seeping blood from brains. Whoa. Oh. Okay. Also, you've got all of that, and then you've got and then you've got Anna Baryshnikov, Mikhail Baryshnikov's daughter, creeping me out. Well, she was creepy, but I've known women like that. Well, Mum, I've seen women like that, especially that moment where she's standing naked and she's operating the phone and not letting her poor old Kristen Stewart get to the phone. I was thinking, I've been in this very situation. Yeah. I've seen women standing in the hall on their buttocks and they're just on the phone. What, with you or with me? Yes, with you. You were somewhere, but you were... Mum, No, that doesn't surprise me. But yeah, she was good. She was so good. And her infatuation with Kristen Stewart, I thought, was really believable. I think she's an absolute star. She is, and that will speak to every lesbian in the audience. I'm not saying that lesbian relationships are more sort of like that than normal, than heterosexual relationships, but it's done very well. Right. That sort of neediness, but Kristen not wanting to be cruel and constantly having to pull herself back. I thought Kristen was really good at all of that. Oh, I thought she was brilliant. She didn't almost want to offend anyone, though. She was kind of offending everyone. Without pissing us off, really. Yeah, exactly. Yeah. And she was, you believe. I bought into her hesitation and her oscillating, and it could have been we could have easily thought, well, just leave. But I bought into the codependence or the connection that she couldn't get quite extrapolate herself from. So I think it did a good job of, in a weird way, sort of broadening that aspect of domestic abuse, which is you always ask the question, why doesn't the abused leave?
Yeah.
And we had a really moving scene where the sister is having a go at her about killing him, and she's like, what the fuck? Why, why? Because we get to the weight body lift, what do you call it? Bodybuilding contest. And I have to give a spoiler here. I wasn't expecting to see Kristen Stewart given birth to through the mouth of a bodybuilder.
Oh, I didn't know whether you were going to go there, but
it was quite well, I'm saying it in case you're fearful, but it's quite mesmerising to behold.
It's brilliantly done.
And again, think magic realism and all this kind of stuff. But her violence, when she lost her shit Jackie, it was truly, truly petrifying. I came out of it trying to think to myself, what is this about? What is this? This is because I loved your enthusiasm. You came out skipping.
Yeah.
You came out with a spring in your step saying this is the greatest, what did you say, feminist lesbian film?
Yeah.
Yes.
I thought it was a modern day, Thelma and Louise, everybody made such a big deal about it. And I thought, this is Thelma and Louise for today. Right. I thought.
With a lot more blood.
With a lot more blood and gore and drug. Well, no, the drugs are sort of incidental in a way, aren't they?
They are, but
except for the fact that they.
But she has become a victim of steroid-induced psychosis. So you can't help but feel, even though they're driving off into the sunset with a stiff in the boot. Yeah. You sort of think, what does their future hold for them? What did you feel their future held for them? I'm not entirely sure it was a rosy one.
They'll both go and open a restaurant and be. They'll be fine together. No, well.
Budgies. They could run a budgie farm.
Oh, I mean, some brilliant little touches that I think only a woman director would have done. Like when he's being beaten up savagely, or when Kristen's clearing up, you hear the sound of a budgie talking in the background.
It was like my childhood.
It was. That we had a budgie the same colour.
When there were huge physical fights between lesbians in my childhood, in the background you could hear George.
Yeah, Georgie was
chirping. Did you feel it was a metaphor? Did you think? I wondered whether the whole thing with her father, and then you had this rather amazing moment where her father is kind of, I thought he was going to be split in two or something.
Yeah.
Was it all about women living within the controlling abuse of men, whether it be from father or husband?
Yeah. But also, I mean,
you don't have a heart attack.
No, sorry, I was just.
Was it a metaphor for domestic abuse? Was it the whole thing?
I don't think it was even a metaphor.
No, it wasn't. Was it?
It was just telling
the opposite of a metaphor.
Actuality.
Real. The thing.
I mean, I just thought it was a sort of brilliantly liberating film. What it said was, you can be anything. First of all, it dealt with the physical issues and the whole sort of thing of, can you be beautiful and big? And it dealt with that, didn't it? It did. I mean, whether I sort of find it graceful or not is my sort of shtick, my problem. Yeah. And she's as strong as you can get in a woman, and Kristen is strong in a different way, in that she sort of keeps on the outside all the time. But they are no match for the men. Until they leave. Well, until they leave.
Right.
It's difficult, this film, because it segues into magic realism, doesn't it? The last half an hour is magic realism. It's not real.
No, it does become a parable or a fable. I mean, because that's, I suppose, I'm not an idiot for going for metaphor, because it does, it's in the trailer. You literally see them running with kind of sparkling stars in the background, and she's become a giant. And it's, we're off into the land of kind of, fantasy, total fantasy. But obviously, it's very successful at not making it doesn't demand of you. A little bit like All of Us Strangers, if you start digging into what the literal logistics of him meeting his family.
That's true, actually. He bought it because of the way
and I think it was the drug taking and steroid taking and the idea that this character. I thought Katy O'Brian was mesmerising to watch. Every scene I was with her, I was really, really drawn to her, what she was feeling or thinking or not thinking or feeling. The whole scene when she kind of was sick within the actual bodybuilding competition, and how that plays out was really dramatic, I thought. I mean, my mum went to the toilet, I would say.
It's a crucial moment, and I'm not an old person who goes to the toilet in films, and I was really cross.
It was a crucial moment where there was a real kind of conflict between Ed Harris and Kristen Stewart's character. It was their moment, son and daughter. Daughter and father kind of coming head to head. Yeah. But as my mum left, he had this moment where, in his rage, which is in the trailer, he then reaches for he's got pets. He's got like I guess they're Death Watch beetles.
Yeah.
And he strokes them and he just eats it, crunches it like that.
In fury.
It was dark and it was brilliant.
I mean, what was lovely about it for me was the fact that you didn't have to sort of say what comes next for these girls, because clearly nothing comes next for them because they're fantasy figures. But at the same time, it's just the fact that they could do their own thing, go off into the desert, be happy. And we all know that relationships, whether they're straight or gay, don't last forever, most of them. And that sort of honeymoon period can't last. But the end of that film is a honeymoon. It's delightful for that, because I mean, I hate to put it baldly, but lesbians don't get that type of film.
I think you're right.
Yeah.
And I think you're right. And I think this does have the makings of becoming an absolute cult classic for lesbians. Forget LGBTQ plus.
Yeah.
For lesbians.
And what they'll do is the straight world will bracket it as, oh, lesbians only like muscly women and this, that, and that, which is, I mean, there's always a way. I mean, one review I read kept referring to Jackie, whatever her name is in real life, as a big girl with dimples. And I thought, you're going to drive me mad if you keep doing that, because it's sort of saying there is a feminine aspect of you despite your big muscles.
Finally, just before we sum up and score it, I think an important aspect to sort of say is that it was comedic at times.
Oh, that was the thing as well, that sort of, poor Mark, I got an ear bashing last night because I was so excited.
I loved it, it was lovely.
It was sort of like, it was all those things that we've already described, but on top of that, so it was feminist, it was lesbianist, it was sort of horror, it was beautifully shot, executed and everything else, but it managed to be funny. And I mean, it was quite, when I went to the loo, which was not a happy event, I can tell you, the cinema was packed actually behind me, and people were laughing, so people did find the funniness funny. Not laughing at it, laughing with it. And it is a curious. Well, actually, I think it's the kind of humour that I think Tarantino does a very good job of being able to generate. I mean, there's the reality of the characters. You're believing what's going on, but he allows you that outlet of kind of laughing at the extremity of it. And I think that's partly down to just quite how bloody, like, when someone's head is blown off is. When a jaw comes off, there was a lot of laughter, and laughter is a way. And I think that again speaks to its grindhouse genre aspect, is that you can tolerate this level of violence and exploitation because it's been couched within a clearly fictionalized context. So going back to the thing of you clearly not going to let me go on this one, of wondering what happened to the next. I'm not really thinking that. No. But I think the film really is saying also it's a film. This is a film. We're making a film about this, and I think to that extent it really relishes the filmmaking process. So I think it's beautifully shot, beautifully constructed. The music is fantastic. It's like the soundtrack versus the songs chosen, the lighting was sensational. Didn't you find that, did you think, did the word come into your head? I thought, what a sophisticated film for only a second time director.
Yeah, very much. It's actually an incredibly complex film. He's doing a lot of things in this film.
Well, I mean, if you think Tarantino made it about his 9th film, it would have taken that long to have been able to do all those things, because like you say, to get the comedic and the comic and the almost cartoon aspect occasionally, but keep...
I think it's really refreshing to have something that felt very Tarantino-esque, but not Tarantino, something of its own, made by a woman. I mean, I think this in and of itself is quite radical.
I've got to find out about this.
That you can get a film made like this, and it feels resolutely from the female perspective. I didn't feel as a straight man that I had moments in there where I could even indulge in, oh, this is erotic, or this, or what have you. It didn't work like that. I
entirely agree, and I think in that respect, that's what I mean by it's a film for lesbians. And it's sort of, there's enough of a story and enough in there and visually to keep everyone, happy.
Okay, well, give us your score, Mum.
I was happy. I said to Mark, it's probably the best film. I have been known to... I came home and I said that to Maddie, and Maddie said, you've said that before, Nan. But no, this is
You had
just
a skip
amazing.
in your step.
No, I was absolutely
Well, you didn't actually,
delighted.
because we talked about that. You didn't have a skip in your step at all.
As it went on, and it sort of didn't... I mean, I suppose it didn't dip. It didn't dip for me at all. If anything, it got better and better. I wasn't prepared for the things that happened at the end. I wasn't prepared for some of the sort of more outre things that happened. But it was delightful, and I'd give it 98.
Wow, 98.
I don't know why I'm not giving it 100, but I'll give it 90.
But my mum was positively skipping, and what I liked about that, I was saying to Nadia this morning, I thought what I think that speaks to, maybe because you're feeling it, you're not able to kind of observe it in you. I think your enthusiasm speaks to a need, perhaps even a desire and an urgency for the lesbian community to feel that there's something that speaks to lesbians. I'm not saying that sometimes I do worry that the catch-all terms that we use for inclusivity of everyone ignores the specificities and specifics of certain parts of that culture. And I think it was really, even I felt it, having grown up in a lesbian household, refreshing to see something that was resolutely about a lesbian. It was like a lesbian sort of Bonnie and Clyde slash the Hulk. Slash the Florida Project. And it's well acted, it was well delivered, and as I say, really beautifully mastered and controlled. It was an incredibly elaborate piece that she was controlling right up until the end.
That's what I mean, sophisticated, I think. And almost as well, what you're saying as well on that, and I sort of mean it as well, is that I mean, it's great to have lots of gay films, more and more and more, but when they say gay, normally they mean male.
Yeah, absolutely.
And this essentially wasn't.
Yes.
And that was brilliant for me.
Yeah, yeah.
That's what caused the skip.
Yeah, absolutely. And it perfectly manifested that grindhouse lightness, which I think people who aren't familiar with the genre would be thinking, how can splattered brains be light and funny? I know Nadia can't square those two things. It really is. But it doesn't diminish the nastiness of the men, nor the kind of revenge, if you like. So if I was to score it, I think I'd give it exactly the same. I'd give it 98. 98 of 100. I think brilliant watch, and unfortunately it's not going to do as well as it should. It hasn't already in America, but it deserves to. It really does deserve to.
High five.
High five, Ma. You good old lesbian, you.